everyone, and welcome back to the Breakdown Tech. Today I'm going to be doing something just a bit different. I'm going to be cleaning that graphics card right there behind me. It's currently in this system that's running, but we're going to take it out here and get to cleaning it. Now, I will say most of the time when you're cleaning a graphics card, you're not going to be doing what I'm doing in this video. Most of the time, just get some compressed air and blow this thing out, right? Just take it out of the system, take it outside, and just blow all the air out of it, right? All the dust as much as you can, and put it back in, and that's fine. Most of the time. But this one was especially dirty. It has dust balls in it and all sorts of gross stuff, so it's best that we take it apart. Because of that, we're going to need some special tools other than compressed air. I'm actually not going to be using compressed air at all, just because I find that makes a mess when something is really, really messy like this, and you're going to have to disassemble it to clean it off anyway. We're going to be using Q-tips, rubbing alcohol, and that's about it for our cleaning products. You can also pull out a brush, like a dust brush, that you might use on a camera lens or something like that. But for me, with this one, I'm just going to be using rubbing alcohol and Q-tips. That's all I'm going to be using. You're also going to need a screwdriver to take the graphics card apart, and you're going to need thermal paste. Thermal paste like this right here. Not that you can see it, it's very, very small, but it's a small tube of Arctic Silver thermal paste, and it'll get the job done for your graphics card because, as we've discussed before, you can check it out at the eye up there. A graphics card is basically just a little computer inside your computer, and because of that, it has a processor and it has, you know, graphical processing unit in it, right? That needs thermal paste. So, anyway, we're going to go ahead and jump on into this. I'm going to be doing a 750 Ti, but other than the fact of your screws will be different and things like that, you don't have any worries as to taking it apart, your own GPU. It's going to be basically the same process. So let's go ahead and jump on into it. First things first, we need to take this graphics card out of the system. Now, I've already turned off the power supply. The system's also off, as you can see. This fan right here is not spinning, and yeah, so popping this thing out is easy. You might have a power cord up here or something like that. I don't. This is a powerless GPU, which basically means it doesn't have a power cord on it. So we're just going to take this, pop it off, but wait, we need to take out these thumb screws here. Sit these somewhere where you will remember them, because you will need them later. Once you've done that, now we can just click over here. Now this one has a little pull tab. Yours might be just the thing you push down and it pops the graphics card up. This one you pull and then kind of pull on the graphics card just a little bit. You don't want to give it too much force here. I'm actually going to come in with the other hand, pull that tab, and there you go. Now the graphics card's coming out, and we've got it plugged into the monitor. That was a fail. Give me one moment. There we go. Monitor unplugged. Now you can just pull it right on out, and here is our graphics card. Awesome stuff. Let's go ahead and crack this baby open. Alright, so here's our graphics card. It's been taken out of the system now. As you saw, it is face down, so the fan is on the front. And now we're looking at the back of the card. You're going to have a few screws. In this card, we've only got 5. One here, 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 and over here. So I'm going to go ahead, take these off, and then we'll crack this baby open. Now, as you can kind of see there, these screws are spring loaded. So you want to make sure that you don't lose those springs or anything. Yours may not be that way, but these are, so just be aware of that. But go ahead, put this one aside, make sure you keep all of these screws. I personally like to make sure that this screw, this screw, this screw, and then the one I just took out here are all together. And then if you have any auxiliary ones like this one, make sure you keep that one separate as well. They're probably all the same, but every graphics card model is different, so you just want to make sure, and that's just to be safe. So there we go, we've got our 4 screws around our GPU out now. We want to come over here and take out this one side screw over here. And then in this case, we can actually see that screw was different there, with the other ones being spring loaded. So that's why it's a good idea to keep everything separate. I do that in my little bowl here. As you can see, I've got screws over here for the main part of the GPU. Got a screw here that came out over there, and then I've got the screws that came out of the system right here. So that keeps everything separate and keeps everything on check. Nevertheless, let's just go ahead, and you can already see this is kind of wobbly. We can just pick this right on up. So that's what we're gonna do. Pick this up, and we should have a fan, which we do. So let me get a better angle on this for you guys. So I've actually turned the GPU around, and right here is a little fan cable. I'm going to zoom in on it. Right there it is, just this little fan cable. Just like the fan in the system, you just kind of pull it, wiggle it a little bit, and it will pop right on out. There may be a little plug, like a little push-in tab. Push that and you'll be good to go. So after a little bit of careful prying with the flathead, as you can see, this is popped off. We're gonna go ahead and take this, the dirty fan part and heatsink part, and just lay this aside right now. So I'm gonna put this over here and we're gonna focus on the GPU. So here it is, and as you can tell, it's very dirty with just dust everywhere. I mean, you can just take your finger here and wipe off some of this dust that's just so heavy with it on here. So what we're gonna do is take our trusty isopropyl alcohol, just name brand or off brand, doesn't really matter, as long as it is isopropyl alcohol, and our trusty old Q-tips, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit of a cleaning montage of me cleaning this thing. So right at the beginning there, I just made a little bitty goof. You see this? I don't know if you can see it too well. Let me zoom in. Right there, we've got some standing isopropyl alcohol. Not a big deal, really not. This stuff evaporates quick, that's why we use it to clean electronics. But this is when a paper towel might actually come in handy. So run to the kitchen, grab one paper towel, and then just fold it up kind of like that into like a little bit of a wad, and then you can just dab this down and pull up, and look at that. That actually pulled off some dirt in addition to getting that isopropyl alcohol that I spilled onto the board off. So there we go. Now, just take your Q-tip and start going at it, basically. You're gonna wanna come in here, kind of hit it as good as you can, and that Q-tip should get pretty dirty pretty fast when your GPU is this dirty here. So as you can see, there's also thermal paste on this. We're gonna take care of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just montage this thing up, and I'll see you guys once it's done. Something to know here, I'm not getting too good of a camera angle, but there are these grates here that point out to the back of your system. You want to make sure that you clean those as well. A lot of people will forget that, and then that'll be dirty when they put it back together, which we don't want. So make sure you clean those as well. All right, so to me, this looks clean. We've still got some drying up here and things like that, but overall this looks clean, except for cleaning the thermal paste off of the actual GPU there. Now, here's the deal though. If we take this and rub it around, right, and just kind of do some spot checking with the Q-tip, it'll turn black if it's actually not clean. So that's a good way to test it. So you can just kind of rub it around and do some spot checking here and see exactly how things are going, right? How all these components have cleaned up. Over here, you're never going to be able to get it clean, and we can actually see right there already, we have gotten some dirt onto this. This side, you're not going to really be able to get it clean without you leaving cotton behind, right? Little strands of the Q-tip, which we don't want to do. That's why over here, I'm just kind of gently dragging, if I'm dragging at all. I'm doing a lot of dabbing, right? Where I'm dabbing down like that and just seeing what I can pick up. It's not perfect, right? It's not the perfect method. And like I said, you're not going to get this side perfectly clean, but it's going to be a lot cleaner than it was before. So as you can see, some spot checking there left that still pretty dirty. So I'm going to keep back to cleaning this thing, and I'll see you guys here in a second. My foot hit the tripod. Sorry about that jerk. So there we go. I'm going to call that clean enough. As you can see, not too dirty there, a little bit gray on the Q-tip. Now let's go ahead and take care of this thermal paste, and then we'll be done with this part. We've still got to clean the heatsink. So as far as cleaning thermal paste, all the heat sinks and stuff like that, I've seen people recommend like taking credit cards to it and doing all that crap. You don't have to do that. Just take a Q-tip with rubbing alcohol on it like this, and then just kind of put, you know, not a ton of force, but a little bit of force in a circular motion, and it will just come right off, right? So as you can see, that side already starting to come off. And if we just continue that kind of thing all the way around, we'll get the rest of this thermal paste off of this thing. And once we've done that, we can go ahead and move over to the top part of the GPU. Also, if you've noticed, my hand has been down this other side the entire time. And because of that, the reason for that is I'm trying to hold this thing steady. You know, cleaning this on a table like this isn't going to break it or anything as long as you're pretty careful about it. But, you know, it's still recommended to hold it in place and not have it move around and scratch everything. So, as you can see here, we've gotten most of this off. And this is actually a dry Q-tip that I just pulled out. Now we're going to clean kind of around the chip here. But again, we want to be careful. These are all little bitty dots, right, that stick up. And because of that, we don't want to hit those. So I'm just kind of cleaning around here. And that thermal paste is pretty much gone. So I will call that a success in regards to that. I'll expect it a little closer, but to me from a distance, you know, kind of cleaning it around the camera, that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and zoom in on it. I am thinking that is pretty shined up there and pretty awesome. I do see a little hair on it. I'll take care of that, and that's what I was talking about. You got to worry about that with, you know, using that Q-tip. But nice and shiny there, as you can see. Pretty cool stuff. So I'll get that little hair off and then we'll move on to the top part of the GPU. So the actual board is done. We've set that aside. It's as clean as it's gonna get without, you know, like bathing it in water and letting it sit for 2 months. But what about this thing? Yikes. We've got dust built up over here. Dust that literally just comes off of the heatsink. I mean, it's bad, guys. So the best way to attack cleaning this thing is just one part at a time. So I'll get this clean and then come around and get this side clean and then get the fan clean. Now we could take the heatsink off the fan if we wanted to by popping some screws out and doing all that stuff. But honestly, I just don't feel like doing that. Most of the time it's not necessary. So don't worry about doing anything like that. Just focus on getting this thing as clean as possible and you'll be good to go. Specifically all of this big dust pieces like this on it, right? You want to make sure all of that's gone, definitely. So something worth noting here is that the thermal paste on this one came off in more of clumps. In that case, I want to typically go ahead and instead of trying to get all that up with a Q-tip, just get a paper towel, tear just a little piece off here, right? This is not a whole paper towel, fold it over a couple times and just come in and wipe that on up and try to pick it up. You also get some of the dust along the way, which is good, and it might take you a few times going in, kind of pinching down on it to get it all up, but once you do, there we go, move it to the side, and then come back in with a Q-tip to kind of clean up the rest. So the top of this is pretty clean, so as you can see there is still some dirt down in these fins here. There's not really much you can do about that unless you take the heatsink off and just run it under water and then dry it off real good and then blow dry it and make sure it gets all of the water off of it or dump it in rubbing alcohol. But overall, that's going to be pretty good in my opinion. Now I'm going to go ahead and start working on this area and getting all of this built up dust off. Then we're going to start working on the fan. For this, I am pulling out the bigger guns here with an actual paper towel with just a spot of rubbing alcohol on it. I don't think you guys can see that on camera, but I've just gotten a spot of rubbing alcohol and I'm just going to run this over this bigger plastic, right? You don't want to do this on the actual GPU, like the motherboard part, but what you can do is do this on this plastic. It's not going to affect it at all. You could also run it over here and maybe get some of those deeper cracks that we were missing before. So I'm gonna go ahead, do this, and I'll see you guys here in a second. So that's about as good as it's gonna get on this side. It's not perfect. You might be able to see a little bit of dust still on here, but overall that's as good as I'm gonna be able to get it. This thing is already looking a ton better. However, if we flip it over to this side, we can still see some dust down in there kind of having collected, right? You see that? How are we gonna get that? Well, there are 4 screws right there. You see that? There are some screws down in there that we can actually take out. So that's what I'm gonna do to pop this heatsink off. I didn't want to have to do that, but this thing is just too dirty. I'm gonna have to. So after moving it in closer and getting a better look, I was able to take those screws out there. You can see that one's out, that one over there is out, and there was one down here at the bottom as well. What that allows me to do is just pick the fan blades right on up and out. Can also pull out that little fan tab here, which we are gonna have to rerun. So be careful with this cord. And actually in this particular GPU, it's ran through a little hole there, and to get that out, we'd have to take the remaining screws out here. So I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna clean this as is with this kind of attached this way, kind of hanging over the side there. Not the best thing, but now you wanna do what we've done before. Get your Q-tips out and clean this thing off. This video ended up being a lot more than I thought it would be, so I'm gonna go ahead and just pop this heatsink off and take out these 4 screws. There's no reason I shouldn't, and then clean that separately as well. Then I think we'll be ready to put this thing back together. All right, so all of those screws out, this literally just lifts on up, and we're left with a heatsink and then a shell for a graphics card, basically. Our fan also went ahead and popped loose because that notch was removed. And yeah, now I'm gonna clean all 3 of these parts separately, and then we'll be done. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera. So our heatsink and our plastic backplate are now both completely cleaned. I spent about 20 minutes cleaning these, and now they are pretty flippin' spotless. I'm proud of myself actually on that. Now though, we've gotta tackle something else. The fan. This thing's still really dirty, and honestly, if we don't clean this, any and all dust that's on it is just gonna eventually blow back into the system. So let's take care of it. Overall, cleaning a fan is pretty easy. You just want to take some paper towels, right? Little rip of a paper towel as I call it. Put some rubbing alcohol on it, just kind of like a cap-sized drop as you can see right there. And then just kind of run it around the blades, right? Run it around right like that, boom. And get as much of this off as you can with the paper towel. You can see quite a bit of it's coming off already. But get as much of it off as we can, but you'll notice there's still that little bitty corner in there. We're going to use a Q-tip to take care of that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll see you guys once I've gotten this thing completely cleaned up. So this is what she's looking like after the first cleanup with paper towels. Not too shabby, but right down in those corners here, let me zoom in on this. You can see that there is still some dust. I'm sorry if that's not perfectly in focus, but I couldn't get it to focus correctly. But right down there in that corner. So we're gonna use a Q-tip to take care of that. And just like that, the fan is clean. Look at that thing. Perfectly clean on both sides. Absolutely beautiful. The corners do not have any whiteness in them. The dust is gone. Guys, we are ready for reassembly. First though, we gotta clean out this workstation. Look how dirty this thing is. So here are all of our parts ready to be put back together. So we've got the fan, we've got the heatsink, and we've got the actual GPU. First off, we're gonna start with this top assembly, put this back together, then put it all back onto here with thermal paste, and we'll be done. So let's go ahead and do that. So we wanna start off with putting the heatsink back on to this plate. Now, how does this go? Does it go like that? Does it go like that? You know, how does this thing go? Well, the screws only line up one way on this one, but I would recommend that you actually go back and like look at this and make sure you're putting it on the right way. But the screws on this one only line up in one particular way, so we don't have to worry about it. And it actually, you would think it sits like this with the flat ends right there. It actually doesn't. This one's gonna sit, I believe, like this right here. So, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put the screws back in here, and I wanted to show you actually my screws. So here's my screw layout. These are the last screws we took out, and then these are the ones that put the fan back in. Then we put the GPU back on it, right? And these are the screws that go in the heatsink. This is the screw that goes in the little screw off to the side, and then these put the GPU back into the case. So with this, basically, I'm working in this kind of an order, right like that, right? So boom, boom, and then jump over, boom, 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 right? I know how that works in my head, but in a perfect world, it would be boom, 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 right in the circle. But anyway, that's how I've organized my screws. Thought you might find that interesting, but let's go ahead and put this baby back together. All right, so our heatsink, as you can tell, now sturdily back on to our plastic body. Now the fan needs to fit right in here, right like that. But I noticed I forgot something. The fan cord here. This needs to run down through a little bitty slot here, right? There's this little teeny tiny notch right here that the fan cord goes in. So I'm gonna have to make sure that gets through there by taking this back off and putting the fan in. I'll meet you guys once it's done. Okay, fan is installed here with the cable running through the little hole right there. Awesome stuff. Now it's time to put everything back together as far as the GPU back on to the housing here with the heatsink. We want to do that starting with the fan, right? So we've got our little fan plug here. We're going to take and plug that fan plug in right here. And it only goes one way because it has some notches on it. I don't know if you can see those there. It's a bit out to focus, but we're going to take, and those are going to go towards this side. So I'm going to go ahead and plug those in right like so. You should be able to stand this straight up, right like that, right next to it. And then just take these and drop them right down in there. Push down pretty firmly, and there we go. Now that's in place. Now we actually want to take a Q-tip and clean our GPU as well as the back of our heatsink that's going to be touching the GPU, just to make sure we get everything off of that before we apply our thermal paste. So with that done, actually let that dry for 5 minutes as well, just in case. We're wanting to take our thermal paste here, pop the cap off, and put a little bit on this. This is not like a CPU where you want to do a pea size. No, you don't want to do that. This little bit out of the tube, take and put that on there. And we actually, as you can see, did a little mess up here. We got some thermal paste going this way. So I'm going to set this thermal paste aside and clean that off. That happens, guys, occasionally, specifically if you're looking through it at a camera. you might have a little mess up like that. And if you do, don't freak out about it. Just attack it, right? Go in here, we got a little bit of thermal paste. Just clean it right on up, right like that. And then come back in and dry it back off as best as you can. Then I'm gonna get actually a dry one and do a little bit of dabbing action here just to get the rest of that rubbing alcohol up. And I'm gonna let it sit for a few minutes just to really make sure that rubbing alcohol is gone. So after that has sat for a while, we just want a little bit more. That right there, kinda get it like this. Now, perfect dab would be great, but that honestly should be enough. You do not need a ton of thermal paste on a GPU. If you wanted to spread it out or something like that, you could, but you really do not need to do that. They also make these thermal paste pads that are perfect for GPUs, but in this case I didn't have any of these, so we're just doing a manual application there. We've already cleaned our heatsink off, our GPU is clean. We are now good to seat this back down together. Now, you would think you would take this part and put it down like that, but you don't do that. With this, you're actually gonna do it in reverse. You wanna kinda pick this up, right, because this is gonna go on the inside, and there are actually some guidance tabs there that we wanna shoot for, but overall, you're right above it, and it just kinda fits right down perfectly, right like that. Now, I'm gonna go ahead, put the screws into here, and then we're gonna be done. All right, now all 5 screws are in the GPU. I did actually notice I forgot to clean this back plate. Luckily, you can do that whenever. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up real quick, and we're gonna put this thing back into the system and see if it boots. All right, let's go ahead and pop this sucker back on in here. So, you guys know how to install a graphics card. Just line it up with your PCI slot right there. You want to make sure that your tab is pulled back, but in this case, it pushes itself back automatically. Push down until it pops. There we go. And now, put your thumb screws back in, and it is installed. All right, graphics card installed. I'm gonna go ahead and plug in the HDMI cable, and then we're gonna see if this thing boots. Let's do it. Alrighty, here is our moment of truth. Reaching around the PC, pressing the power button, nothing. Oh no, I forgot to turn the power supply back on. Reach back there, flip the switch, and there we go. How many of you have done that? As you can tell, this thing is spinning up. This is actually a Haagen-Dazs build, so for some reason when it spins up, all of the fans spin at 100%, and then it, does that. Now you can see it's booting into Mac OS here. We're obviously putting out video signal from our GPU, which is good. It's also fan on the GPU is spinning, which is what we want as well. So yeah, it looks like this has worked perfectly fine. Once macOS boots up here, I will go in and show you guys the Apple settings or whatever about this Mac, and then I'm gonna set up this camera and do a quick outro. So here we are at about this Mac. As you can see, NVIDIA GeForce GTX 750 Ti right there. Awesome stuff! Yes! We have cleaned this graphics card. What a journey. That actually ended up being a lot more intensive than what I was expecting it to be. Took me 2.5 hours to record and clean that graphics card, which is insane. It shouldn't take you that long. The reason it took me so long is I was recording while I was doing it, and that always takes a lot longer, doing different takes, getting angles and things of that nature. So anyway, there it is. The system is booted. We are good to go. I'm gonna run Cinebench on this real quick and see what the results are. And the Cinebench results are complete, and we gained an impressive 3 FPS over the benchmark before. The reason I say that's impressive is because, guys, we literally just cleaned the thing and put better thermal paste on it, but the fan was actually restricted in spinning up to max speed when it was dirty. So yeah, you can actually get a performance boost by doing this. Nevertheless, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We make tons of awesome videos exactly like this nearly every single day of the week. My name is Nick. This has been The Breakdown Tech, and I am out, guys. Peace.